Coming up in episode 166, Dena DeCastro with the Astrology of Summer 2020.
Yes. Yeah. I'm getting a lot of the WTF questions from people. This time frame, June and July, really stood out for me from this year. And I thought, ooh, that's going to be interesting. That is going to wake up your mind and your senses to feeling that curiosity again. Okay. So does that feel right for you?
Oh, yeah. I think you nailed it there.
Welcome to the Big Seance Podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSeance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the seance.
Full disclosure, as I record this intro, it's June 3rd, 2020. The main part of this episode was recorded on June 1st, 2020. With everything going on right now in the world and the unrest here in the US and the pandemic that is still a thing and still a threat, I may or may not have sent our resident astrologer, Dena DeCastro, an email that opened up with something like, WTF, what is going on? Fortunately for us, she jumped in the Zoom machine to help us all out. She was also willing to give readings to 2 members of the Big Seance Parlor on Facebook, which you'll get to hear in this episode. So see, it pays to join us in the group if you're on Facebook. I want to thank Chris and Carrie for letting us be creepers and listen in on their readings. I think you'll enjoy it. But first, I need to tell y'all something. This privileged white podcast host needs for all my listeners of color to know that you matter to me. You matter to me. My heart has been broken so many times in this last week, and I've been riled up. My anxiety is high, and I can't focus. And like many of you, I'm angry. And on social media, I can't count the times that just this week, my ego has jumped out of my fingers before I could catch it and pull it back. But I, just like many of you, I hope, we're hopefully learning to do more listening while also being supportive. And God knows I'm not perfect. And my little podcast here and the content that I cover could be so much more diverse. And I could do a better job of making sure of that. So I pledge to work on this problem. But I'm also not too cool to ask for your help. You know, who needs to be on this show? Please reach out to me. Patrick at BigSeance.com. But seriously, every one of you, you matter to me. Let's celebrate the diversity in our community, but also work to make it more diverse because it needs it, y'all. And I don't even know how to end this part, but I'm just proud of myself for not crying. So there we go. Anyway, let's pour some tea, shall we? Or maybe even something stronger, if you want. Or something stronger. Here we go. Dena DeCastro has been a professional astrologer since 1998. She received her training in evolutionary astrology from Stephen Forrest's apprenticeship program. A former college instructor, she now teaches and mentors those who wish to learn about astrology. She has published several articles in the Mountain Astrologer magazine and is a regular guest on various podcasts. You can find out about her readings and mentorship programs at DenaDeCastro.com. She's been on this show several times before, giving us our astrological forecast for 2019, our forecast for 2018, and the same for 2017. And I always say this, but it would be really interesting to go back and listen to those and see how things turned out in retrospect. But she's been on the show a few other times on top of that. And I'll have the links to all of those episodes in the show notes at bigseance.com. But today, you are going to hear what the stars are saying about the summer of 2020. You know you want to know this. So let's get to it. One of the things that we like to do when Dena comes into the parlor here is give a few listeners astrology readings. And I know that's been a big hit and people like hearing that, and gives them kind of a little sample of what Dena can do if you decide to work with Dena. But before we do that, I just wanted us to have the chance to chat with Dena about what's going on in the stars right now. So what's going on in the stars right now, Dena DeCastro?
Hey, Patrick. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely.
I love being in the parlor. It's right now. It's funny because you reached out to me, last week or something and said, what is going on? Basically.
I think technically I said WTF.
Yes. Yeah. I'm getting a lot of the WTF questions from people. You know, as I looked at 2020, the astrology of 2020, which I do at the beginning of every year, and often I'll do some kind of a post or a podcast, interview about that the year ahead, right? Usually in January. But when I was looking at the year ahead, this time frame, June and July, really stood out for me from this year. And I thought, ooh, that's going to be interesting because we have so much going on astrologically in these next couple of months, really packed in to this time frame. Some very auspicious things. And then we have August, which is like almost relatively clear, relatively few things going on astrologically. So I want to frame this in terms of just the summer. And for me, I know summer technically begins June 20th seasonally, but we all a little bit think of summer as June, July, August, right?
It's summer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's summer. It's already getting hot and stuff in the Northern Hemisphere, at least. So this is a time frame, these next 3 months, that I'll break down into overview, and I'll talk a little bit about the specific events. And then when we get to the people who are getting readings, I'm really going to do a very focused reading in their chart on this major event of the Venus and Mercury retrogrades that are happening, both overlapping in June, and where those land in their chart. So it won't be like a full natal chart reading that they'll get, but they're getting a sense of how these things that are happening now affect them individually. And so that's what I'm doing with all my clients right now. Like, we're looking at how are these retrogrades currently affecting you? What can you look for in your life? How can you work through it? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? So let's break it down.
The WTF reading.
The WTF question. Yes. What is the actual going on in the summer of 2020? So first of all, we have in June a Venus retrograde that's continuing, that started May 12th and is going through to June 24th. And that is, really about taking a step back and reconnecting with our values, what is really valuable to us. Also, Venus is the relationship planet, which most people are aware of that piece, Venus, the goddess of love. But I don't look at Venus as being gendered, so I don't consider it a goddess. I think of it as the force within us or the force out there that is about connection. It's about the desire to connect with others. And so it rules relationships, right? Of all kinds, close one-on-one relationships, not only romantic or love relationships. So right now, and during this Venus retrograde through most of June, it's in Gemini as well. Gemini, the sign of, most people know, the twins. And Gemini is a sign that is about communication. It's about speaking and listening. And so if you start to put all those things together, you're seeing a theme here, a theme about need to take a step back and reconsider how we are showing up in our relationships in terms of our communication skills. How are we doing with our listening skills? How are we really hearing our partner or friend? Or are we just talking at them? Like, these are themes that are coming up. So the example that I used in a post that I wrote about this was, you have that friend or that partner that tells you the same stories over and over again, right? We all do that, though. We just don't think we do it. We think the other person does it. We just forget when we do it. So my challenge to people is, okay, if somebody does that, if your close friend or your partner shares that story again, not to just shut down and go, I don't want to hear it again, or I'm just going to ignore that or let it go, but to rather ask questions about it. Like, why? I wonder why this person is telling me that again. Maybe there's something here that I need to understand and that can help me to better understand them. So one of the strategies of this time is to be curious about what you don't know about your partner or close friends, and to really attune your listening skills. Now, we're at a time in this country where everybody's really talking at each other a lot. I don't see a lot of listening going on. I think all of us could use an advanced course in listening and really hearing other people right now. So that's the more collective layer of this. It's like what's going on in our country, but on the individual level and what we can do in our daily lives with our partners and friends, engage in the practice of listening with and being still and actually taking it in, and look at your relationships with a beginner's mind. Look at your relationships with fresh eyes. So that's the calling. That's the invitation of Venus retrograde in Gemini. What can go awry, during this time? What is the shadow that can play out? And this is always possible, is, not listening, meaningless chatter going on, getting distracted by the shiny object or objects. Now, this can come up in relationships too, where we get bored and then we, might want to go look at somebody else or something else that seems more appealing at this time because we're bored. But the more functional way through that would be to figure out, why are you bored? Not why isn't the other person fulfilling my need in that way, but what can I do to understand my own boredom here? And then ask for what I need. There's the communication piece. Ask for what I need rather than just getting distracted and going off over there, right? And one of the other shadows that's, definitely showing up right now is information overwhelm and confusion, letting the mind override decisions that should be made with the heart, but from a place of just overwhelm, of too much information, not enough connection to the heart and the emotions. So that's, Venus retrograde. Again, I always want to emphasize retrogrades are not bad or negative. There is really no such thing as a bad or negative thing in astrology. That's really a myth. But we can learn to use and navigate these energies well, and we can learn to avoid the pitfalls. And then at the same time, in June, we have Mercury retrograde starting. So this makes the picture even more interesting because we have two planets that, Mercury goes retrograde often. Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year. Venus, not as often. Venus goes retrograde once every 1.5 years.
Which is interesting because the last time you were here, I looked at the show notes. We talked about Venus retrograde
Yep.
the last time. And that was October of 2018.
Yep, I remember that. And so, yeah, there's a pattern here. You're reaching out to me for Venus retrograde stuff.
And before that, prior to that, I only knew that there was a such thing as Mercury retrograde because you hear that all the time. And I was like, what? There are other retrogrades? I remember that.
Yes, that's a common it's a common thing. Most people only hear about the Mercury retrograde. If you're not an astrologer or really into astrology, you would have only heard about the Mercury retrograde, because that's the most common one. And so that Mercury retrograde here overlaps with the Venus retrograde. And it's happening in the sign of Cancer, which is about connection to home and family. It's also about connection to our deeply felt emotions. And so, Mercury and Venus both happening retrograde for about the period of a week during June. That Mercury retrograde starts June 17th. And so they're overlapping for just a week from the 17th to the 24th. But then there's this, what we call the post-shadow period, where both of them, Venus and Mercury, even after the retrograde ends, Mercury's retrograde ends July 12th, Venus's retrograde ends June 24th, but both of them are in what's called a post-shadow until the end of July. And a post-shadow means the time it takes for them to come back to the place in the zodiac where they started their retrograde. So it's like they've been moving backwards from the Earth's perspective to a certain degree, and then they need to catch it back up to where they started that backward movement. So there's still some influence, basically, of the retrogrades at play during the whole month of July. Okay. But that Mercury retrograde on top of all this, with that Venus retrograde, really enhances the idea of communication, potential communication breakdown in relationships, but more specifically family relationships during that time. And so in order to work against that, we again have to be very clear with our words. We have to speak from our heart. We have to stay connected to the emotions and not get too heady about what it is we're trying to communicate. And that can help to ease some of the tension at play during that period of time with Mercury and Venus both retrograde. So I'm not going to say this isn't a challenging time, but if you can prepare for it mentally and also in your relationships to bring this to consciousness. I mean, that's the whole point of astrology, is it helps us to bring things to the surface so that we can be aware and practicing in our daily lives. For example, the skill of listening, the skill of speaking from our heart, not from our head. Another thing that comes to mind with that Mercury retrograde in Cancer is speaking with sensitivity and empathy versus, speaking without that being cold or clinical or harsh. So when we can blend in some of that Cancerian energy into our communication, the more nurturing, caring, coming from the heart in our, speaking on our needs and relationship, then it's more easily heard on the other side than if we're coming at it with a attacking way or a harsh way, obviously. But those are some suggestions to always be keeping in mind. And so when you bring this down into your daily life, it's not as easy as it sounds. I could say all these things. This is, again, this part is speaking from the head place for me. When I try to integrate this into my daily life is the practice. It's a spiritual practice. I have to use all my training and my, therapy and my relationship skills that I've learned so far to do these things. So I'm not saying this as if I'm an expert on this and I know it all and how to do it. I'm in this too. Oh, okay, I get, as I'm saying to you, where I see in my life that I can be applying these things and doing better. For me, if you have Gemini strong in your chart or the sign of Cancer strong in your chart, meaning if you have Sun in Cancer or Gemini, or Moon in Cancer, Gemini, or rising sign Cancer, Gemini, you're going to be feeling these energies more strongly. So those of you out there who know a little bit about your chart, or even if you just know your sun sign, maybe you can get some hits on that right away, that you'll see how this has already been playing out and will continue to be through the end of July.
You were saying earlier, were you saying that you looked back at your forecasts from before and this June and July period, you kind of saw this period and what's going on in our world right now with the COVID-19 stuff and at least in the US, the unrest that's going on right now. Can you go back and see how that was written in the stars? Not necessarily written in the stars. I know that's a wrong way to look at it, but.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's, I could never have predicted COVID. I'll say that right off the bat, and could not even have predicted the current unrest in the way that it's happening now. Although, and I did a look at the United States chart last year on Slade Roberson's podcast, and we talked a little bit about 2020 and some of the things going on in the United States chart specifically. And yes, I saw some potential for this kind of social unrest. And those have to do with, or that has to do with a couple of other things too, that are also on this list of things happening in June and July, which is we are entering into an eclipse portal, which it means that, we have usually our pair of eclipses. Eclipses happen every 6 months, 2 weeks apart. We get a pair. Okay. So they're not uncommon, eclipses in and of themselves. But in this case, we have 3 in a row instead of 2. We have one on June 5th. We have one on June 20th, and then one on July 4th. Okay. Which means it's right on the United States sun and the United States chart. So eclipses, to me, historically I've said, and people who have heard me on other podcasts, I don't go overboard on giving a huge amount of importance to eclipses in the sense that like they're not something to go crazy about. Like people go crazy online about the supermoons and all that. It's like, yeah, the moon's a little closer. It's not like something to freak out about.
Set your crystals out and,
Yeah, exactly. Do a ritual in your backyard. Yeah, maybe. But, and probably if you're a listener to this podcast,
right,
which I am. So yeah, I mean, think of eclipses as just extra powerful new and full moons. That's really what they are. Lunar eclipse is the full moon eclipse, and a solar eclipse is the new moon. So we have those coming up, and on those dates that I laid out, all within this window of Venus being retrograde and then Mercury being retrograde at the same time. So if you add in that extra energy, of these lunations, I think there's something here about this being a time for a big reset. I think of eclipses as hitting a reset button on a certain issue. And here are the issues of the eclipses happening. 2 are in the signs, the Cancer Capricorn polarity. So Cancer, again, the sign of Cancer, right? In fact, one eclipse in Cancer happens right on the summer solstice, which is when the sun enters Cancer on June 20th. And so this Cancerian theme comes to the surface again. Cancer is about connection to home and family, and also our deeply felt emotions, our emotional bonds with others. So it's time to do a reset on the way that we've been interacting in our closest relationships, and to clear out some of the old resentments that we've been carrying around. This is a shadow Cancerian theme of holding on to old emotional gunk that then ends up making us not feel well rather than the other person, right? Because Cancer's, as a sign, Cancer tends to hold everything inside, but to really process it deeply. So that theme is up for all of us right now, whether you're Cancer or not, whether you have Cancer in your chart or not. We're all feeling this theme present right now of being aware of all the old emotional baggage we're carrying around and needing to shed it and vent it and let it go. Now, how you're starting to see that happening, on the collective, I think it's happening in a very dysfunctional way, in some ways, but also I'm not going to, cast aspersions on the people at all who are protesting, or the, any of the social unrest that's going on, it's almost like when things happen on a mass or collective scale, the worst common denominator can more easily come out because the mass mind is, is going to choose the lowest common denominator. And you see that with the looting. Mm-hmm. But where we can do something different is on the individual level and the choices we make. That's the only place that any of us have power. So we have to clean up the emotional gunk in our own lives, the things that have, been resentments that have been brewing or things we've been carrying around for a while. And the other theme that's present here, the first eclipse that's coming up on Friday, June 5th, is in Sagittarius, the moon in Sag. And Sagittarius is, in its shadow, and the shadow that's being brought to light here is know-it-all energy, or just feeling like I'm right because I'm right, without questioning enough. And so the invitation is to really question and be curious. Again, back to that Gemini, right? This is the stew, that we're in right now. And like I keep saying, the only thing that any of us have control over is what we do in our individual lives. So the more you can become aware of what's going on in your own life, and I would suggest even in your own chart, the more easily you're going to be able to work through this time.
So to attempt to simplify and summarize, we're needing to ditch baggage.
Yeah.
We are tuning into our emotions more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We are going to listen more than talk.
Yeah.
Ditch some of the analytical stuff. What am I missing?
Yeah. That's all good. That's all good. You're not missing anything.
That's good. That's what I took from it.
Yeah. I think you heard it right. And I think that if we bullet pointed that would be enough to work on for these next couple of months. And I'll just say one more thing about the summer, that after June and July, we get this, I feel like it's a reprieve month of August to integrate. Thank you, Jesus. Save me, Jeebus. August is a pause where there's not as much astrological activity going on, hardly anything really of note. And so that's a time when if people have been waiting to move forward on something, you're going to be able to do it more easily in August. Or you could choose to use that month to just rest, after all of this that's just happened. It's up to you. But it's a free will zone. It's right now we're in the middle of what it feels like a lot of winds of fate blowing that all we can do is kind of hunker down and not get caught in the cross breeze. And work on our own stuff. And just know there will be a lot of confusing energies out there. And you just have to keep questioning and keep an open mind and keep listening and discerning for yourself with your heart what's true.
You rock, Dena DeCastro.
Thank you. I always like to hear that from you.
So are you ready to do some readings?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we have Chris, who is going to get a reading from Dena, and Dena has Chris's birth information and has already produced a chart, and we've sent that chart on to Chris. And so, Chris, meet Dena. Welcome to the Big Seance podcast.
Hi,
Howdy.
Chris.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
So far, so good. Thanks.
Good. Well, I hope to keep that going. Really, what we're looking at today is this is like a slice of the pie of what I would normally do in a full reading. So it's not a full natal chart or forecast reading, but what I am going to look at is a couple specific things that are going on in the sky right now as they affect your birth chart.
Okay.
So the first of which is the Venus retrograde that's going on right now. And where that is happening in your chart is in the 12th house, which is the house of spiritual connection. It's the house of surrender and letting go, where we let go of all the ego stuff. Now you, in your natal chart, your birth chart, you have two planets there in the 12th house. You have Mars and Mercury sitting there. And so you're already attuned to the 12th house as, it's like your way of connecting with spirit or the divine or the transcendent. For you, it's much through learning and getting new ideas and doing research and gathering a lot of information. It's through experiencing life and continually being surprised by it. That's the Mercury in Gemini that you have in the 12th house that allows you to connect. So what Venus is really doing as it's moving through your chart and spending a lot of extra time in that house. In fact, it will be there in your chart through probably the middle of August. It's helping you to reconnect with some core things about yourself and your intellectual likes and the things that may have, got you along on the spiritual path to begin with. The things that sparked your interest there to begin with early on in life are coming back around for you. And so a good thing to do with this energy is to reinvestigate for yourself. What are the things that make you feel most curious and alive? And to bring more of those things into your life right now. That could be learning something new, but it can more likely be revisiting an old passion, an old hobby or passions, something that really sparked your interest a long time ago. And this actually helps you to connect with spirit, with the transcendent more easily right now, and helps you to let go of the need to micromanage or control life as much right now. It can also be something that alleviates anxiety. I know we're all many of us are experiencing a great deal of anxiety right now. And the 12th house shows us what is the antidote to our anxiety. How do we move out of that? And for you, it's study something, immerse yourself in learning that is going to wake up your mind and your senses to feeling that curiosity again. Okay. So does that feel right for you?
Oh yeah, I think you nailed it there. Okay. That's one of the ways I've been trying to keep occupied right now is just like either video courses or that kind of thing. And I find that when I don't, I tend to get a little anxious and wallow, so to speak. So
yeah. I mean, I could see where for you the key to assuaging that anxiety is going to be twofold, and I'll just throw in a bit from your natal chart here. It's also going to be working with your hands in some way, like gardening, being in nature, balancing the mind with the physical. Yeah. Those two things will help you a lot with the anxiety right now. Okay. So really carve out the time for yourself for that over the next couple of months, particularly, and prioritize those things.
Alrighty.
And then, so we have one more piece, which is the Mercury in Cancer going retrograde June 24th through July 12th. And that's happening in your first house. Your rising sign is Cancer. And so this is going to be a strong Mercury retrograde for you, meaning you'll feel the themes more strongly. So it's about going back to your roots and going back even into some childhood memories right now that could be helpful to recover some missing pieces for you, some missing pieces of your story, your history, your family history. This could be helpful right now in getting a more whole sense of yourself back. And so this can require talking to family members that are, older family members that are still around, or siblings, if that's the case, people who share the history with you. That could be a theme also. And it might dovetail with, what I just talked about, like the being curious and learning and researching something, that there's maybe some family research or lineage research that is important to you to attend to, particularly over this next couple month period. Okay. Could be even visiting those people once social distancing is lifted.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Okay.
Yeah. So do you have any questions or anything else that I can answer for you?
Well, it's probably, I don't know how much time, I don't know how much time this would take. But in terms of just what does it say about career right now in terms of just that kind of, as far as what my direction or what what I should be doing. Like, should I be trying to look for for other opportunities? Should I, that kind of thing?
Right. I mean, that's a great question. A lot of people are going through this right now. And the big word for this year is reinvention, reinventing ourselves from many of the astrological things that are going on, one of which is Saturn having gone into Aquarius, which is another whole topic. But for you, in your chart, one thing I want to say in general about June and July, that's not the time, these next couple of months, to make huge life decisions or major life changes. When we're going into a time of 3 eclipses and these retrogrades overlapping, it's more of a time to wait, see, and get perspective. Do the research, follow this thread that I've given you, about following your interest and the flow of that, and see where it takes you over the next couple of months. And on the other side of that, in August, it will likely become more clear what that next step is. Don't force it. Don't feel like you have to figure it all out right now, because I don't feel like now, particularly now, meaning these next couple of months, is the time where any of us are going to have a lot of answers. More questions than answers are arising. But yet we all feel it's understandable. This is where the anxiety comes from. We all feel like we want to have it figured out. We want more certainty right now because we've had so much uncertainty for the past few months, right? And that's just not forthcoming right now to have it all figured out, but to wait and see and get perspective and just attend to the things methodically that you can take care of that are in front of you at the moment. That's your best bet right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good then.
All right, Chris.
All right.
So I have a question. Last time we did this, Dena, it was like Aries night. Both of the readings we did were very similar themes and charts, and even myself as the host. And so there was a lot of resonating going on. Who listening to this might find, so that people know when they're listening, who listening might find some of the same themes as Chris here? Because I don't know how to, say that.
So if you have Cancer rising, you're going to have some of those same themes. Is that what you're meaning? Like what kind of things in your chart? Yeah. If you have Cancer rising, or if you have planets in Mercury, those are, or I'm sorry, not Mercury, in Gemini, those are going to be themes similar to what I just spoke about with him particularly.
Awesome.
So 1 in 12 people will have Cancer rising, just by the numbers, right? So that's a good portion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Awesome.
Hey, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
You're very welcome.
And now Dena gets to work with Carrie.
I've just been a fan of both of you for so long. I'm just so excited right now. I have no questions.
Well, thanks, Carrie.
I'm here for the ride. How's that?
Awesome.
So, Dena, we have our second listener who would love to get a reading for you and is excited. And this is Carrie. And again, Dena has all of Carrie's birth chart information, and Carrie has that chart as well. And so I'm excited to see, how this one works out. This one should be different from Chris's, correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Sometimes charts can have a similar layout depending on, where the rising sign is. But in this case, we have a completely different chart, completely different houses, astrological houses that are being affected by the two main things I'm looking at. So Carrie, what I said to Chris as well is that this is not a full natal chart reading or forecast. That's my disclaimer. There's much more in-depth things that we can do if we had time to work together. But what I can give you here is a taste of what's going on in your chart right now based on two things that I've been talking about with Patrick today, which is the Mercury retrograde and the Venus retrograde that are happening in from June through July. And so the first one we'll take on is Venus retrograde, which for you currently, it's in the 5th house of your chart, which is the house of creativity. And Venus will be moving backward into your 4th house, which is the house of home and family. Okay, so these are the two areas most affected by this Venus retrograde. Now, this can be an extremely creatively fertile time when you give yourself the time to rest, to retreat, and to reconnect with those things that you may have enjoyed earlier in your life, those old interests. But this is specifically going to spark your creativity into a new direction. And that new direction is more forthcoming once you get to August. So in other words, now is the time to percolate on some creative ideas, to let yourself enjoy reading or consuming some of the things that you like to consume, aesthetically or artistically, so that by the time you get to August, you'll feel this impulse to take all that you've absorbed over this month and next month, and to then put it into some kind of creative action, creative work. The fourth house piece of it, and that's what I've just spoken to, is the fifth house part of it. But then the fourth house is home and family. So there are some similar themes here that we see to Chris's chart in this theme of home and family coming up, both with the Mercury retrograde that we're going to talk about, and this Venus retrograde for you, Carrie, specifically happening in your fourth house of home and family. So there may be people from your past that you need to reconnect with now in order to resolve some old issues. That likely comes more to a head or to a culmination point around the third week of June, so the middle part of June to the third week of June. And it may have to do with resolving some old issues around the structure of the family and things that need some change there for you in order to work better. And so that sometimes means confronting. That's not a fun word for most people, but confronting old, family stuff that has been buried or repressed. And that can be the cause of some challenges there for you. And I bring in this theme of challenges because that Venus will be actually stationing on your Saturn, which points to where we are doing the hard work in this lifetime. Like, where is the bulk of our work? That is in the fourth house of home and family for you. So you will probably have likely seen in your life that family feels like a very karmic area. It's something that you keep getting drawn back to have to work through childhood stuff, family issues from the past. But this actually is good news in that it's a time where you can have a breakthrough and see things in a different light. You can reclaim the story or retell the story for yourself in a way that is more empowering. But in order to do that, it's like you have to go back into the old stuff, right? So that's one piece. And then we have the Mercury retrograde, which for you is also crossing over into two houses. It's currently in the fifth. It's going to eventually get into the sixth, but then we'll move back into the fifth. So the common denominator so far that we have is the fifth house, which is, again, the house of creativity, creative expression, using your creative energies and putting it out into the world. It's also, though, the house of fun and pleasure. Okay, so how do those things go together? Well, what we consume, what we do creatively stems from our ability to have leisure time and fun time to create the things that we want to put out into the world. So you're being invited to take some time, as even though you're going through that little bit of a tough time with family issues, in June to the full length of July, to be focusing on how can you reignite your creative spark through letting yourself have some fun, do some self-care in that regard. And then again, that leads to the ability to do some creative expression, which then will lead eventually in late July to August to the ability to to take that creative work into your actual daily work somehow. That whatever you find out creatively over this next couple of months will then go into the work that you do on a daily basis. So I don't even know what your career is or what your job is or what you do for daily work. But the signs are pointing to your creativity needing to be more a part of it, meaning your creative expression, your fun, and your childlike self being more of a part of it. And so the big recommendation there with Mercury retrograde, which again is, from June 24th through July 12th, but really shadow through end of July, that period of time, be balancing all of that deep family stuff that you're working on with heavy doses of fun and play and recreation time so that it doesn't feel so dark and heavy. And then that space that you give yourself to just cut loose and have fun and enjoy, it again ignites some creative expression that's leading you to take it into your daily work and your whatever you're doing for service out in the world. So do you have any questions there or any feedback, anything that you'd like to know?
I don't really have any questions. It's hitting home though. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. There's some turmoil and I'm feeling the weight of it and I'm not letting go of the creative part. Like I feel the urge, but I'm fighting it because I feel like I need to keep my focus with the family issues. And I feel by, having the creative issue, I'm ignoring what I should be working on. So I love that that's introduced and it's okay to have those moments where I'm like, okay, I'm taking a break from this heavy issue and having some fun over here. So I love that's, I guess, permission. I guess you've given me permission.
That's beautiful. That's what I strive to do. Honestly, that's a big part of what I do in readings is give you permission to do what you already are feeling is the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we get so hung up on the shoulds and judging ourselves and second guessing ourselves that we just don't do what we know we need to do for ourselves. Exactly. So I'm giving you permission slip to bring in more fun and play, create a big space for fun and play to balance out because the family stuff is just going to be there. It's just going to be there. And you do the best you can in that. And your best tools there are, again, I spoke to this at the beginning of the podcast a bit, but the listening, the re-investigating, what is new here, what about these relationships might be new or different than you thought they were. And then letting go of the old emotional baggage. That was another piece that I talked about with Patrick. So those things are still good recommendations for you. And, for you specifically, this creative area of life has to be very alive and full right now. So yeah, give yourself permission. That's beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Carrie.
So this is a time when just with what's going on that I think leaders and matriarchs and families are probably just feeling a lot of, in general, pressure and responsibility to keep things together. Would you resonate with that, Carrie?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's almost, you feel like the creative and the self-care is selfish with the thing, with the pressures and the things that are going on personally and just globally. Like you feel like having that little bit of fun is almost selfish in a way, but it's not. Just like she said, you need that so that you can have the strength to handle what you need to handle, the heavier stuff.
That too. And I think when I look at the chart, I see how each house flows into the meaning of the next. So the 5th house is about creative expression and fun and play. And the 6th house, which is the next house, is about service and daily work. Now, the connection is when you've had time to play and have fun and create, then maybe you can build that thing that you creatively, that you had fun making, take that into some kind of a skill or service that's then useful to other people. So those two things are not mutually exclusive. The ability to be of service and help others and the ability to play and create. Like they
I like that. Yeah.
Depend on each other. Yeah.
Yes, I like that.
Well, Carrie, thank you for being willing to let us all listen to your reading with Dena and for being here.
Oh, it was an honor. It was an absolute honor.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Dena, that was awesome as always. And do you have any final thoughts and, where can people find you and what's going on?
Yeah. Final thoughts, just remember that we all have the power within our own lives to make different choices for ourselves and to become more conscious. And that astrology, as I'll say over and over again, and probably said on the show before, it's not predictive. It's not meant to, tell you what will happen. We get to choose and co-create with the forces at play what happens. So that's something I always like to put out there. And so for me, you can find me for readings and for astrology mentorship at DenaDeCastro.com. And you can email me too at Dena@DenaDeCastro.com and put Big Seance in the subject line if you email me, just so I know where you're coming from. I'll be sure to get back to you real quick.
Cool. You rock, Dena. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. It was so great.
Thank you to the following super paranerds who support the show at patreon.com/Big Seance. Susan Davey, Josiel Lorenzo, Jim Budd, Natalie, Genesis, Bliss is my muse, Justin J. Justin, Anne Marie Sullivan, Melissa Armour, Kim Robb, Paula Mitchell, and Amy Park Gedicke. My supporters at the Parlor guest level, who can be found at bigseance.com/Parlor guests, are Linda of ShimmeringMoons.com, Denise Sia of Mystic Moms Paranormal, Anne Rekovich of OzParatech.com, Norman and Linda Keller, Lana and John of CarbonLilies.com, Christopher Kohler, Bruce Williams, Marion Hover, Clairvoyant, today's guest, Dena DeCastro at Dena DeCastro Astrology, Nettie, Glenna Becker, Diane Rax, Peggy Hagen, David Rubenstein, and David Curry. That sound you just heard was the above and beyond. There's not even a category for your level of support. Fireworks display. I don't usually run out of breath there because I have 4 awesome listeners who support this show at the $10 level. Steve Skinner, Kevin Gilbert, AJ Meredith, and James Wilfong. So thank you, Steve, Kevin, AJ, and James. And thank you, Paranerds.
For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseance.com. You can find and subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and just about anywhere podcasts are found. Do you have any comments or feedback? Go to bigseance.com/feedback to learn how to get your voice in a future show. Or you can call my feedback line, 7755-TELL-ME. That's 775-583-5563. Interested in learning how to promote and share the podcast? Go to bigseance.com/share. Thank you so much for listening. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.